And I would also like to ask you that youths, like, what do you think youths and parents are missing to understand about gaming? Like, there are a lot of there are a lot of nascent thoughts, and they're like, so what do you think people usually do wrong, and what is the right way to take advantage of gaming, for development of youth?
Yeah, I think what we found in the past was some kind of generational gap. So let's say my parents, they didn't grow up with games. They were not used to games. So to my parents, digital games were something very strange, and they could not engage with gaming. So what happened to my generation was that a lot of people of my age grew with parents who could not understand games. And I think that's something very good that's missing in those cases, because if parents and kids could play together, that can be a very rich experience. It can be entertainment for parents, it can be relaxing for parents, it can be very nice to kids as well, and can be bonding. So they can make their love stronger if they play together. That's a very powerful experience, to play games together. So that's something that in the new generations it will be more common, I believe, because people, let's say, of my age, um, many people of my age already grew up with games. So when my generation have kids, it will be probably more, it will be easier to my generation to play with the kids. So this tends to get better, I suppose. More parents finding easier to play with their children, and uh, creating bonds, and also avoiding conflicts. Because what happens sometimes is that kids feel the pressure to play games. They really want to, but if the parents cannot understand that, and they reject totally this possibility, this can create conflicts, in the house, and arguments and discussion. And it could be the opposite way. If people are playing together, creating bonds, it would be even easier for the parents to control what kind of content the kids are having, right? So if the parents and the kids are playing together, parents will be more in a position to help them to make good choices in terms of games, to avoid games that are too violent, or to avoid, or to encourage children to play games that are more rich in terms of culture. So just to give an example, there is a very famous a series of games that's called Assassin's Creed, right? It's quite
Yes.
violent, so it's not very advised for kids, I suppose. But if we just keep the violence aside for a while, if you just look at the cultural research and historical research that the teams made to create games like Assassin's Creed, they do a lot of research in culture and history to create the game. So they are very rich in terms of culture. So let's say if it's of the right age, if the kid is not too young, that could be very nice, because it's a game that's very rich and full of elements, historical characters, historical places. So it's only, I mean, if the parents are engaged in gaming with their kids, they will be more in a position to help them to decide for nice games. And so that's something that I find relevant. And the other thing is that I have the impression that that kids really struggle to admit to their parents that they play too much. So I think at one hand, it would be better if kids understand why their parents are saying that they should not play too much. And I think one of the best ways to do that is dialogue, conversation, honest conversation. And at the same time, if parents have the conditions, allow children to play a little, not too much, but let them play a little. Let them have fun with nice games. And there are games appropriate for different ages. So yes, this is some of what I would probably say to parents who are struggling with kids who play too much or play inappropriate games. Maybe play with them. That would be nice.
Okay, that's interesting. But mostly, people like parents don't spend time on gaming, and they think that it's wasteful activity. But what are you most excited about in the gaming industry for the future? What is the most interesting technology and things that are going to be changing gaming in the future?
Well, just a note on what you just said. I think that's a very relevant point. I don't think playing games is wasting time. I think playing
Yes.
games is entertainment, is leisure, right? So what we do is that we as human beings, it's good for us if we do have some time for leisure and entertainment. It can be watch a movie, it can be, play chess, it can be, just walk in the park or something like, or play with the dog, or there are lots of things that we do that we just do for the leisure, for pleasure. And that's fine. We need these kind of experiences. So digital games are just one of those. They're not a waste of time. They are they are one possibility of leisure, and we need leisure and entertainment. We just have to decide. I mean, it makes no sense to say, playing games is a waste of time. Let's watch a movie, because they're kind of similar in that sense. They're both
Yes,
entertainment.
but like mostly parents say that movies are also a waste of time.
That movies are what? Sorry.
Movies are like everything is like waste of time almost. Just like go and play outside.
Oh
Don't
yeah,
like
yeah. But if you
like
play it,
yes.
but if you're playing outside, I mean, it's also entertainment, isn't it? It's. I think it's more about balancing the different ways that you use to find leisure. So, video games is a way of of having fun, spending some time, entertain yourself with something. Watching a movie is also a different way of doing that. Going out and play with your friends in the streets is a different way. Play with the dog in your house if you have a dog. It's also the same thing. So it's all about balancing. There's different ways in which you find entertainment. And the other question that you made is about what makes me excited about the gaming industry. And I think what I said earlier is something that makes me really happy about how the gaming industry is getting quite diverse, and it's getting really making an effort to having a diverse set of not only characters in the video game stories, but also having a very diverse set of employees, right? So not only in the virtual fictional world, they have man and woman, and they have white and black and Indian and all sorts of racial backgrounds, and they have lesbian, gay, transgender, all sorts of people with disability, not only as characters in the game, but also in the industry. So as employees. And people, things like, for instance, sexual harassment, that was a bigger problem some time ago in the game industry, because in an environment in which the majority of people are men, sometimes women would be disrespected, and that would be felt like it was okay. So now these things are being discussed more openly, and the industry is getting more diverse, and uh, it's really nice to see this happening. And also, I think there is a very interesting tendency of trying to use games to convey more sensitive stories. So we have this big game, recent game, like The Last of Us, There's a very big production in which they were really dedicated to make a story that's really sensitive and very beautiful and poetic. And I think it can really use this potential, because we knew for decades now that video games has this huge potential to tell interactive stories in a beautiful way. But most games in the history of video games would not focus on history, or in story, sorry, would not focus on the story. And if they focus on the story, it would normally be stories of of war or of violence, and not necessarily stories that are more poetic. And now they are kind of exploring that more in the big industry, and I find this fascinating.
Okay. So that's interesting. Can you tell us, like, there are a lot of like, as you said before, violence. There's a lot of violence in games and all these things, and like, it's mostly. How do you think we can incorporate like moral values and educations into game? Because I think that will work a long way into changing the mindset of the parents, especially like most of the old parents, like who don't like mostly allow gaming and all of that. So what do you think?
Well, I think as I said, I think values in games are changing, and I think they are changing for the best, being more diverse, touching sensitive topics, talking about things like mental health in games and depression, things that people, we need to talk about these difficult topics. So in that sense, it's getting better, I suppose. But uh, I believe when it comes to education, like to schools and things, it's kind of a completely different field, because since a long time now, I think since the 80s, we are trying to develop games that are they're called educational games, that games for learning, and they are available, people can use them, but and they can be powerful sometimes, but they are challenging for teachers to use. So I think the potential is there, but I'm not sure whether um, I think I'm not sure what we need to use them more. I think we already know how to do educational games, but it's very difficult to find the money to do successful educational games that have the quality similar to the big productions. So I don't know. We will see what is going to happen in terms of educational games. There are new initiatives, interesting ones. Minecraft being used in schools and this sort of stuff. It kind of merges the big productions in the game industry with the schools, so they can come together in a nice way. But when you produce educational games, that's a big challenge. It does happen, it can be effective, but it's challenging to teachers, it's challenging to developers to do good educational games.
Okay. So what? So you're like, since you're a game researcher, and like, please tell us about the most important aspects of a game. Like, when you create a game, what are the like most important factors that make a game successful?
Yeah, so what we have today is that the market is very full of games. We have too many games, right? So especially in this century, like after 2000, and let's say after the 2010s, let's say the last 10 years, it became a lot easier to people to create and publish games, because there are lots of tools available to help you create games more easily. There are lots of ways to publish your games online in a very cheap way, so everybody can do, basically. So because it's so easy to create and publish a game, there are so many people creating and publishing games. There are just too many games around. So the biggest challenge, especially to small developers today, is how can I make my game stand, make a difference, get the attention of people among so many other nice games around. So I would say that if you have, a huge team of developers who are very, very good developers, and you have lots of work, a lot of money to put into marketing, then perhaps you just need to make a good game because you have all this money to put into marketing. But if you don't have all this money, you probably you need a very creative idea that will make you be perceived as different, because there are too many. I mean, every month, lots and lots of games are being published, and nobody have the time to play them all. So it's like a sea of games being published everywhere, and you have to find a way to be perceived. So I think that's a key point that's very difficult to measure. So you can measure when you have a good artist or a bad artist for a game, and you can measure when you have a good programmer, like the person who is going to lead to deal with the technology. You can measure that. You know what's a good programmer and a bad programmer, or a good artist and a bad artist. But how do you measure what's a good idea? And how do you measure an idea that's going to be successful in a market that's so crowded of games? That's
Yes.
very difficult to do.
Okay. And so I think I understand this, but can you tell me can you sorry, I don't think your video is getting disconnected a lot. So what would be your one advice regarding gaming to all the youth like who's watching here? What do you think are the most important factors to keep in mind and like while gaming, and what do you think like what will be your advice?
Yeah, I think something that's important, especially to people who really like games, is that I would advise that they try to engage in honest conversation and dialogue about gaming, because what can happen is that people are like, they love games so much that they can get really defensive, and they don't want to recognize that there are potential problems, like, bad stereotypes, or some people play too much. And I think it's more healthy if we recognize that bad things can exist, and we can deal with them the best way that we could, and at the same time recognizing the rich potential that we have with video games. So I think we have to be very honest about these kind of things. And the other thing is that I find relevant is to keep the balance. Keep video game as a balanced with other practices that you have. Go out with your friends, spend time with your family, study, dedicate yourself to your career, sleep well. So have your balanced life, and make video game part of this balance, and not something that disturbs the balance. I think that would be the kind of the key point.
Okay, and thank you for sharing that. Please, children, keep in mind, Sir is a very interesting person. And if you have any more questions regarding gaming and anything else, just mention them down in the comments below. We'll answer those questions in the next interview. So, Sir, let's go on to the next question. Uh, do you read? What are your favorite books? And if you like, please share.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question, because I really like reading, and it's very difficult to pick one book that you'd find so powerful or relevant. And there was one book that I read when I was quite young, and I really liked. It's called The Golden Compass of Philip Pullman. It's a
Oh,
fantasy book. It's it's kind of a bestseller fantasy book, and it's for the youth. And I really found this story so engaging. So I'll recommend that book. And it's the first of a trilogy. So if you like the first book, there are two more books later on of the same series.
Okay, and with like so that's interesting. The Golden Compass. I think there's a movie on it as well.
Yes,
So
and about the movie, lots of people did not like the movie. So if you watch the movie and you don't like the movie, it does not mean that the book is not amazing. So the book is still amazing, even if you don't like the movie. Lots of people didn't like.
okay, and so after that, who are your role models? Like from whom you have been inspired and who have helped you? Like and why?
Yeah, I think in lots of areas in my life, I think something that I really admire is when people are able to be generous. And I think in different moments of my life, people have been very generous to me. And even if I couldn't pay back, let's say, they were just being generous. And I think that's some that's something very important, and that's something that I try to do, to younger people, to my students, to be generous, even to dedicate myself to be a good influence to them, even if they cannot pay me back, because it's not about paying me back. It's about uh, you know I was helped a lot when I needed, so I'm happy to also help others when I realize that they also need help. So to keep this kind of link of generosity is something that really inspired me on people that I have found and that who were very generous to me.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for sharing that. Now, sir, I would like to ask. So, lastly, I hope you enjoyed the show because I certainly did. I love to talk to you, and you shared a lot of insights on gaming. And I hope these insights, my viewers, have helped you. And keep in mind, how gaming is beneficial. But yeah, you have to keep in
Mhm.
mind that there are some things that or like you get addicted. So keep that in mind as well. So thank you, my viewers, for watching until the end. If you're still watching, click the like button and please subscribe for more content. So, sir, please advise what unique thing you have liked about Aditya Talks, my show, and any suggestions which should be incorporated in improving the experience for the viewers.
So sorry, did you ask me to suggest names? Could you repeat, please?
Okay, please advise what unique thing you have liked about Aditya Talks and any suggestions which should be incorporated into the experience.
Something that I really liked about not only this interview but the others that I have watched is that I think you seem to be really curious. You seem to have a really curious mind, and you really seem to be interested in all these answers and all this knowledge that is around and that people can offer. So I find this very inspiring. I think it would be good for youth if they keep always a curious mind and allow themselves to be passionate about what they can learn, what this person in front of me can offer, what this person can tell me that can make me more complete or more knowledgeable. So I think that's very inspiring, and I would um, compliment you for that, for being such a curious person.
Okay, thank you, sir. And any advice?
Um, I don't know. I think you're doing a good job. I don't have an advice ready for you. I think just keep doing it, and no
Thank
advice
you,
for the moment.
thank you for like coming on the show. I learned a lot from you, and I hope we can do many more interviews in the future. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And also, yeah.